Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 1, my 30-day long marathon to see as much theater as I possibly can across the country and across the ocean. Packed everything I was bringing into my trusty backpack before heading out to the airport. Now, at this point in time, I did not know what I was going to see when I landed in my first city, LA, but I did at some point remember that I had credit at the Pantages from when Mean Girls was canceled in 2020 and took that as a sign that it was time to finally use it. Boarded the plane and did do a little bit of work because I will be working remotely on this trip. Also hopped on a Zoom call about the business of Broadway from Ken Davenport. That was fascinating, and in fact got tickets to my show tonight. Now, I lived in LA for like half my life, so it was really nice to be back and check out all my old neighborhoods. Also checked out my theater for tomorrow. Did a little bit of self-healing by jumping on the line I was mugged on last time I wrote it. Thankfully, we have both changed for the better. Checked in, got a costume change, and then did a nice touristy walk around Hollywood. Wait, was that an Easter egg? And finally, it was time to grab some food before heading to the first show of the trip, Peter Pan at the Pantages. This national tour is not coming to Colorado, so I was really excited to catch it on the road. And the Pantages is a historical theater that I just find absolutely gorgeous. It was really great to be back. This used to be where I had a season subscription when I lived here. Full review on Peter Pan coming soon, but overall this was a successful first day of this trip. I cannot wait to take you along with me, and I hope you enjoy the ride as much as I am. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 2, another day on my epic journey across the United States and the ocean to see as much theater as possible in the next 30 days. Now, the question I get asked most is, how am I able to afford to do all of this? And the answer is, one, I kind of don't. This will probably bankrupt me, but two, I am still working. So a lot of my day actually just looks like this. It's a lot less sightseeing than a normal tourist would do, and a lot more trying to find a quiet place to sit that, if I'm lucky, has Wi-Fi and an outlet. But after I get that work done, I can go see theater like the world premiere of Cinderella's Castle. If you are a Star Kid fan and you don't want to be spoiled on the set or the costumes, this is your warning to stop the video now. I've been a fan of Star Kid for a very long time, and ever since they started doing shows in LA, I've been seeing their productions live, and I could not miss this one. The first time I saw one of their shows in the LA, it was in a super tiny theater. They didn't even sell it out. I think I got my rush ticket for like $10. So to see them go from that to now sell out the El Portal in North Hollywood was incredible. And when I do these theater trips, I often tend to seek out new world premiere works over revivals or productions that I've already seen before. So this was a must-see on this trip. Overall, it was a successful second and final day in LA. Stay tuned for tomorrow when I'm hopefully able to fly to my next city. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 3, the day where I tried to go see as much theater as possible and Spirit said, fuck you. Now, today was going to be the travel day to get from the West Coast to the East Coast. And because of the outages yesterday, I knew I wanted to get to the airport early. So I headed straight downtown, grabbed a bite to eat, and then jumped on the flyaway bus. Now, my original flight was leaving originally at LAX at 9, and I got to the airport at 4. So I was there super early, took the time to take a nap, got some work done. Now, there were some flights getting delayed and canceled, but I was hearing nothing out of my gate, though there were a lot of people surrounded around it. But still, I never heard a boarding call. So about 15 minutes before my flight, I went over to the gate to check to see when they were going to start boarding. And you know what they told me? They already did, and they closed the gates. So I freaked the fuck out, and they refused to help me at the gate and sent me back down to check-in. But again, because they've been canceling flights, that line at check-in was over an hour long. Nevertheless, a miracle happened and they booked me on a later flight, so I headed back to the same gate, and that's when I realized I lost my wallet. Thankfully, 30 minutes later, they found my wallet and returned it to me, and then an hour after that, my flight got canceled. And that's where my footage ends, because I'm literally still here at the airport. Y'all, this has been a nightmare. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 4, the day where I was supposed to go back to seeing as much theater over the next 30 days, and instead became, will I ever get out of LAX? After being trapped in LAX by Spirit Airlines, I rebooked a new flight on American, and thanks to all of you, I did not go bankrupt because of that flight. I got some much needed sleep on the floor, and then it was time to get on the plane, and it happened. The flight took off. Now, this flight was going to get me from Los Angeles to Philadelphia, which was at least somewhere on the East Coast, and thankfully I got even more sleep on the plane. Now, this flight was originally going to get me to Boston last night, but that flight got delayed to the next morning, and I was like, I need a bed. And at this point, I had had enough of airports, so I got out of there as quick as possible and took the train to New York, where I can now be back on the original schedule of going from New York to Boston. I may only be here for a brief pit stop, but I've never been so happy to see New York City, and yes, I will be back. And while I saw no theater today, maybe this is the start of a one-person show. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 5, my quest to see as much theater as possible over the next 30 days. After a 2-day travel nightmare, I was able to get back to doing what I came here to do, and that is see as much theater as possible. After driving all morning listening to show tunes, we made it to Cambridge, Massachusetts for the first show of the day. Now, I've been to downtown Boston before, but I've never been to Cambridge, and it was absolutely adorable. Had some great food at Flower, and then headed to the American Repertory Theater. ART has been on my regional theater bucket list for a long time. They have done such pre-Broadway premieres as Waitress, the Pippin revival, and I was so excited to finally get to go to see Gatsby the American Myth, the other Gatsby adaptation with music by Florence Welch. And they do lock up your phones in yonder pouches for this one, so this is us getting all of the Biden dropped out notifications. Afterwards, I said goodbye to my friends and took a tour of the Legally Blonde the musical set. Now, I had no plans for the night at this point other than make my way to downtown Boston, but after I checked into the hostel, I found out that they do free Shakespeare in the Park in Boston Common. There was a show starting in 10 minutes, so I ran over to the park, grabbed a seat, and watched The Winter's Tale. Commonwealth Shakespeare Company does free Shakespeare on the Common every summer in Boston, and this was such a cool program. And as a bonus, it was a Shakespeare play that I've never seen in full before. It was great to get back to seeing theater with a surprise 2-show day, and I can't wait for more shows tomorrow. See you then. Welcome back to the Great Theater Adventure Day 6. It was time to get back to seeing as much theater as possible, so on my last day in Boston, I checked out, got a quick rush ticket for my night show, and decided to do the entire Freedom Trail. The Freedom Trail is a 2.5-mile long walk throughout Boston that stops at a bunch of historic landmarks like the Meeting House, Quincy Market, Paul Revere's house, and this was a great free way to sightsee in Boston, but to also just spend my last day. And for anyone that wants to make a full day of it, there are a lot of museums at each of the stops, but I just decided to do the walk, stopped to get some gelato in the North End, and took a lot of photos and a lot of breaks because it was hot. But after I finished the entire Freedom Trail, I decided, like an insane person, to just walk all the way back. I mean, why not? It was a beautiful day, and I had nothing else that I needed to do, like plan my entire Edinburgh Fringe schedule. Stopped by at Flower again because it was that good, and I had been dreaming about this sandwich since I had it the day before. Walked all the way back to the theater and still had some time, so decided to check out the library. At this point, I was regretting all my life decisions, so I decided to make my way to the theater, and it was time for The Queen of Versailles. Now, you know I love a world premiere, and this was also my first time seeing Kristen Chenoweth in a show. I've seen her in concert a couple times, but I was shocked to realize that I've never seen her in an actual musical. And full review coming soon, but I'm so glad I got to see this, and I'm so glad that the Today Tix had an affordable ticket option for this show. And after that, it was time to pick up my bag from the hostel and head to the airport because it is on to the next city. See you there. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 7. After waking up in the airport, it was time to head on a plane to my next city to see as much theater as possible. That is right, surprise, we are headed to Chicago. A huge thank you to my friend who helped me get these plane tickets to make this leg happen. Now, I did sleep on the plane, but I was still exhausted, so after grabbing digital rush tickets on Today Tix for my night show, I immediately took a 3-hour nap and then headed into the city. And it was a gorgeous day in Chicago, so after dropping my stuff off, I just spent the day walking around the Loop area. Obviously, I had to take a walk through Millennium Park and, of course, check out the Bean. It also looked like they were doing a free concert in the park, which I would have loved to have checked out, but I had theater to go see, so grabbed a sandwich before heading over to the Goodman Theater. The Goodman is another regional theater that has been on my regional theater bucket list for a while now. They did the pre-Broadway runs for both the Tommy Revival and Goodnight Oscar, and I was really excited to go see the world premiere of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which is the newest Jason Robert Brown musical. Because if Jason Robert Brown writes a musical that's a period piece about a murder that happens in Georgia, I'm gonna be there. And especially with this cast, I could not miss this show, and I'm so glad I got to squeeze in Chicago to see it. Got one more day in Chicago tomorrow, so I'll see you then. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 8, another day of seeing as much theater as possible over the next 30 days. Today was the final day in Chicago, so after checking out of the hostel and getting a bit of work done, I decided to take it easy with a nice stroll along the river. For an added bonus, found a free museum along the way. Now, the perks of traveling as light as I do is that I can bring my stuff wherever I need to, but on days like today where I don't have the option to store my bag until after the show ends, I do have to end up carrying it with me, and that can become cumbersome after a while. So I kept the walking to a minimum and headed straight to Chicago Chicago Shakes on Navy Pier to see if they had any discount ticket options available for their new Lord of the Rings musical. Now, the good news is Chicago Shakes does offer discount tickets. The bad news is I have aged out of the program. So shout out to the box office worker that got me a little bit of a discount to get me this really great seat for under $50. And it was great to get to revisit Chicago Shakes. I love this theater and have not been back since the world premiere of the Notebook musical. The show was quite a journey and was almost 3 hours, so by the time I got out, it was time to walk back through Chicago and head to the airport. Loved getting to make a pit stop in Chicago, but it's time to head back to New York. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 9, another day of trying to see as much theater as possible, and today we're headed to New York. After getting no sleep in the airport and an hour's sleep on the plane, I was exhausted. But instead of resting like a normal person, I headed straight to Bryant Park for the Broadway in Bryant Park series. For 4 Thursdays every summer, they do a free concert in Bryant Park featuring Broadway shows. And I love this concert every year. It's a really great way to see some of the standbys perform, to experience songs from new and long-running and even sometimes upcoming Broadway shows. If you haven't been to one yet, there's one more happening next Thursday. And the reason I came back to New York was just to go to Broadway Con, so I had no shows planned this entire weekend. But because I was so exhausted, I knew I wanted to see something short, so I headed to Joe's Pub for a concert of new songs from Picnic at Hanging Rock, an in-development piece all about these 3 girls and their teacher who go missing during a school hike. And with a cast featuring Lorna Courtney, Helen Shen, and Katrina Lenk, it was definitely worth staying up a little longer. But afterwards, it was finally time to go rest. See you tomorrow for the first full day of Broadway Con. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 10, the first day of Broadway Con. Broadway Con is one of my favorite events every year where Broadway fans and Broadway professionals come together for 3 days of panels and performances and just a ton of fun. Like, where else could I see 2 of the writers of one of my favorite musicals of all time followed by one of my friends moderating their own panel, and then following that up with performances from new and upcoming Broadway shows? Like, only at Broadway Con. I also love strolling the booths at Broadway Con, even if my wallet does not. I'm a huge fan of Broadway art and Broadway pins and stickers, and you can get literally all of that at the marketplace. And if you're going to Broadway Con on Sunday, check out the Tony Awards panel that I'll be a part of. After the con was over for the day, I did have time to go see a show, but I had nothing planned, so I looked for some last-minute discounts and ended up getting a last-minute rush to Someone Spectacular. It was a perfect first day of Broadway Con, and I can't wait for the rest of the weekend. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 11, another day of consuming as much theater content as possible. And after fueling up on caffeine, it was time to head to the second day of Broadway Con. And today it was all about the panels. Started off by catching the recording of the Celicia Show episode with JJ Neiman and Ambry Mon. Attended one of my favorite panels of the convention, the annual photographer panel. Broadway photographers are one of the unsung jobs of the industry, and they always have the best stories. Went to another recording of a different podcast, The Broadway Breakdown with Matt Koplik, featuring the theater lovers. Got to compete in some Broadway trivia that I unfortunately got out of incredibly embarrassingly fast, and finished the day by catching a panel on actors and using social media with some familiar faces. Did my daily check into the marketplace to join in on a sing-along and look at all of the things that I absolutely had no business buying, and called it a successful day 2 at Broadway Con before heading to grab something to eat before the night's show. Now, I had entered the lottery this entire weekend, and the day before I found out I won the Hadestown lottery, so I had to go and check out the new cast. Every single cast that joins the show brings something completely new, and I'm so glad I got to see them, and this won't be the last time you see the show on this series. See you tomorrow for the final day of Broadway Con. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 12, the final day of Broadway Con. This was one of those days that the schedule was not in my favor, and all the panels I wanted to go to were at the same time, so I did a lot of 50-50 splits. Started off at the lyrics panel with some musical theater lyricists before heading to the panel on touring as an actor, and then it was time for the main event of the day, our live taping of the latest episode of And the EGOT Goes To. And the EGOT Goes To is a podcast that I'm on with Spencer, Ashley, and JT, where we talk all about the Tony Awards. And I loved getting to talk a little bit about what we expect to see in 2025. Got a contract from some Broadway producers before heading to lunch at the burger joint. Hidden away inside the Thomas Central Park Hotel, this was an absolute hidden gem. Then went back to the marketplace one last time. It was finally time to just splurge all of my money on pins and prints. I will do a full haul, but I got a lot. I just freaking love pins, y'all. And again, another panel conflict, so I had to do another 50-50 split between the puppetry panel, all about puppetry in shows, which you know I love, followed up by who is being influenced and the effects that influencers have on actually bringing people to shows. And then finished up the convention with Becca from Baltimore's panel all about her experience on the POTUS Trail. And then did the unthinkable, and instead of seeing a show, I went and saw a movie, but really it was to support the Music Man's own Hugh Jackman. Seeing a movie instead of a show allowed me to call it an early night so I could get my laundry done before the second half of the trip, and then I pulled my back out. Will I be able to carry my backpack on the plane tomorrow? Find out in the next episode. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure, day 13. After some rest and meds, I woke up with a pain-free back and ready to see as much theater as possible. Today was a big travel day and my last day in the United States, so I finished up work before officially going on PTO, left the work laptop behind, and packed everything else up into my backpack. Unfortunately, there was no room left for Ogie, so I had to say goodbye and head out on my way. Even though I wasn't able to see a show tonight, I still made a little time for some theater, heading to the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts to check out the Photo Call exhibit. This free exhibit features photographs from both Joan Marcus and Carol Rossig, both theater legends in the world of Broadway photography, and you can see the photographs for free through September 25th. My favorite aspect of this museum was to get to read all of the anecdotes behind the photo, like how this iconic Little Mermaid image was composited. Grabbed a quick bite to eat before heading off to the airport. Unfortunately, with the time of my flight, there was no time to squeeze in a show, though I did think about it. But I was not going to cut it close with this flight, so I got to the airport super early and got ready to hop on board my flight to London. Now for this flight, because it was overnight, I ended up splitting my personal item into a carry-on and a smaller bag so I could get a little bit of extra legroom. And with this night flight, I got the whole row to myself, so I was able to stretch out and get some sleep. Can't wait to land in London and hit the ground running with some great theater in the morning. See you then. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure, day 14. Today I woke up on the plane, landed in London, and hit the ground running. The best thing about London is that for somebody who's trying to see as much theater as possible over a 30-day time period, London has matinees basically every day of the week. And when you're landing in London, the best way to combat jet lag is to just stay up all day and go to sleep at a normal time at night. So I went straight to the theater to see Kathy and Stella solve a murder. I love a good original musical, and as somebody who is also fascinated with true crime and would listen to murder podcasts, I had to go see this show. After the matinee, I had just enough time to go check into the hostel, drop my stuff off, and grab a bite to eat before my night show. Another original musical, my second show of the day, was Fangirls. Straight from Australia, it is now making its West End premiere in London. I've listened to this cast recording a couple times, but I was excited to hear the changes and to finally see a full production of this, and this did not disappoint. On a 2-show day running on airplane sleep, I needed 2 upbeat shows, and these were the perfect bill. Because I'm not gonna lie, after all that travel, I was exhausted. But it was finally time to head back to the hostel and get some much earned sleep. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure, day 15. We are officially at the halfway point of my 30-day long marathon to see as much theater as possible. And what better way to celebrate the halfway point than with a 3-show day, starting off with Rough Magic before walking to Trafalgar Square to catch the matinee of People, Places, and Things. And I also got to catch up with some friendly faces. I missed the show when it was in New York, and so I was elated to catch it in London, and it was incredible. Walked around London for a bit, caught an influencer in the wild, and caught some musical theater busking in Leicester Square. Miles Crossley was fantastic, so here is a little preview. Couldn't find an a la mode, but did grab a scoop at McDonald's before heading to Next to Normal. I have not seen a production of this show since the original production, and this revival was everything I wanted it to be. Full review coming soon. But this was the perfect way to end an absolutely fantastic 3-show day in London. Then got in a bit of a panic over my Fringe schedule, but that's a problem for another day. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theatre Adventure Day 16, another beautiful day of seeing 2 shows in London. Started tackling a little bit of the Fringe schedule before visiting the Today Tix booth and grabbing one of these free pin badges. Grabbed a quick bite to eat and did some walking around the city, even spotted some of these mysterious red envelopes from Today Tix, and headed to the first show of the day, Hadestown. Yes, this was my second Hadestown of the trip, but my first time seeing it in the West End with the London cast. One of the reasons why I keep going back to this show is every time I see it with a new cast, it's basically like a new show, and this London cast was no exception. In an exciting surprise event, we got to see Ally Daniels debut as Hermes. She was incredible, and I got to see Donald and Grace as Orpheus and Eurydice before they leave to go work on their next projects. Then, after grabbing a quick bite to eat and meeting up with some friends and filming absolutely none of that, it was time to beat the rain and head over to the Duke of York for Jamie Lloyd's Romeo and Juliet. I love Jamie Lloyd as a director. I have so many thoughts on this production. There is definitely going to be a full review coming, because this production was definitely something, as was the incredibly entertaining crowd at the stage door. Overall, a fantastic day of seeing theater in this unintentional Sunset Boulevard themed 2-show day. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theatre Adventure Day 17, another day of seeing as much theater as possible in London. We started off learning a little bit of magic at the School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, unaffiliated with the turf herself, before heading to the Gillian Lynn to see Standing at the Sky's Edge before it closes this weekend. This was the Olivier Award-winning musical last year, and it absolutely deserved that Olivier. I adored this. Full review coming soon. This is one of many new British musicals that I'm seeing on this trip. There's just so much good theater coming out of London. Afterwards, it was time up to meet up with friends because everybody I know is in London right now. We grabbed some food at Wagamama before heading to our night show of Hello Dolly at the London Palladium. A brand new production of Hello Dolly just started in London, starring Imelda Staunton, and this production was an absolute joy and very different from the Broadway production. Imelda Staunton is a theater legend in the West End, and this was my first time getting to see her on stage, and y'all, she was glorious. Then it was time to meet up with some friends again before calling it a night. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theatre Adventure Day 18. It was my last day in London for now, and we did a 2-show day that was a little bit unorthodox. After grabbing a delicious Eggs Benedict at the Canada West Cafe, we headed to the first show of the day, Phantom Peak. The best way to describe Phantom Peak is like an open world RPG, but in person. This takes immersive theater to the next level. For 4 hours, you basically have free reign of the experience, choosing your own adventure. There's multiple paths that you can take, mini games that you can play. Some quests will lead you to solving a mystery, other quests will take you on an adventure. Every quest will have you interacting with the cast of characters that populate this town. During our time visiting the town, we helped one character solve a mystery of why she was glitching and entered a film festival. And because it's their summer season, we also got to play some fun summer camp games. And there are so many quests in this game. This truly has infinite replayability. I would absolutely go back the next time I'm in London. And if you are a fan of theater and video games and escape rooms, I highly recommend checking this out. After heading back over the ridge, it was time to find something to eat, so grab something at Burroughs Market before heading to the second show of the day, another non-traditional theater experience. ABBA Voyage is a concert that uses modern technology to allow ABBA to look like they're performing in front of you as if they were still in the 1970s. And this technology is freaking cool. I love ABBA. I had a blast at ABBA Voyage, and I hope that we see similar things happen to other artists in the future. This was a fantastic out-of-the-box day in London to say goodbye. I will be back on the rear end of the trip, but for now, it's time to head to Fringe. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theatre Adventure Day 19, and today it was time to start the most intense leg of this trip of trying to see as much theatre as possible. After a few days in London, it was time to head to Scotland to knock off one of the biggest bucket list items I have, attend the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Edinburgh Fringe happens every year in the month of August with over 3,000 shows playing in the entire month. To say this is overwhelming would be an understatement. I tried to plan out my Fringe, and I'm not gonna lie, I booked about half of my shows for the day on the train there. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I cannot wait to see as much theater as possible. And because I was so excited, I got literally 1 hour of sleep and then no sleep on the train, so I was exhausted but ready to go. But winging it is somewhat relaxing, and I was still able to manage a 5-show day. Started off with the one-woman show, The Things I Did While Waiting for You to Fall Back in Love with Me, which was hilarious and incredibly relatable. Then headed to the greatest musical the world has ever seen, a one-man musical that is sort of like if Evan Hansen wrote musicals instead of letters. Got to see Solve It Squad, the only ticket I had booked at the beginning of this day, because this is the Tin Can Bros Scooby-Doo parody, and then finished off the night with an absolutely perfect 2-show queer extravaganza of both Diva Live from Hell and The Diary of a Gay Disaster. I could not have asked for a better first day of Edinburgh Fringe. I cannot wait for the next few days. I'm going to see so much theater. This is essentially my heaven, even if I don't have everything quite planned out yet. See you tomorrow.
Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure, day 20 and day 2 of the Fringe Festival. At this point, I was really feeling the exhaustion, but I came here to see as much theater as possible, and today that is exactly what I did, seeing 9 shows. Started off with some early morning horror at Bird Watching before seeing Diana Giulietti belt to the gods in Barbara and Kenneth, then walked all the way across town to catch the hilarious Burning Down the Horse, which was a Trojan War comedy, caught the new musical Come Dine With Me, which is a musical adaptation of the reality TV show of the same name, headed to the AI science fiction romance musical You and It, and at this point I definitely hit a lull in the day, but we quickly rallied with my most anticipated of the Fringe, finally seeing Rob Madge's My Son's a Queer. This show brought me back to life and took me on an incredible second half of the day, following that up with A Letter to Lyndon B. Johnson or God, a incredible look at the cost of war and boyhood, followed by Dylan Mulvaney's incredible one-woman show that moved me to tears and laughter before ending the night dancing the night away at House of Cleopatra. And the perfect way to end an epic 9-show day, grabbing drinks with friends and comparing notes of the shows that we saw before heading to bed and doing it all again in the morning. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure, day 21. Decided to take day 3 of the Fringe a little slower, so after picking up my media badge, I headed to the first show of the day, 1984. 1984 was also the only ticket I had at the start of the day, so I really was winging it. And what I ended up gravitating towards were shows that people had mentioned in passing as shows that they were interested in or had seen before and really enjoyed, starting with Potty the Plan. Then headed to Heartbreak Hotel, which really dived into the science of a heartbreak, and followed that up with the insanely hilarious one-man musical. Despite its very generic title, this is a musical all about Andrew Lloyd Webber that may or may not be shut down by the end of Fringe, so go see it while you can. This is so funny. At this point, I had figured out what I was going to see at the end of the night, but I had a really large open slot, so I just went to a random theater and picked something and ended up at Influence, all about this guy that ends up inadvertently going down an incel pipeline, and ended up being kind of fascinating. Then finished up the night at the hilarious Swamplesque, which is in fact a Shrek-themed burlesque show, which was not only fun and silly, but also incredibly body diverse for a burlesque show. I adored this, and it was the perfect way to end the night. And really, the only way to finish this night was by listening to Chapel Roan in an Irish bar in Scotland. Fringe continues to be incredible. I continue to be exhausted, and I can't wait to do it again tomorrow. See you then. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure, day 22. And it was time for a full-on theater sprint, seeing 9 shows in a day. And once again, because I suck at planning, I only had a single show booked at the beginning of the day, so I was really going based off of friend recommendations and where our schedules would align. And for the most part, they really did not lead me astray this day. Started off strong at Traverse to see the lesbian adaptation of Cyrano, and I almost skipped this one because I don't love Cyrano as a story, but this was truly like if Cyrano got fat ham. Took a lovely walk over to Summer Hall, where I spent most of the day, starting with Burnout Paradise. Yes, they are on treadmills. Yes, this show is absolutely incredible. This is a show that just feels so much like a Fringe show, and I would go see this again if I could. Met up with my friends who were spending their entire day in the Roundabout Theater to go see Bell Ringers. This ended up being one of the more divisive shows of the entire trip between me and my friends, and I loved it. Checked out the new musical I'm Almost There that I need a cast recording of immediately. Honestly, I loved the songs in this and continued the streak of absolutely incredible theater with Shit Theater or What's Left of Us, a folk music performance piece all about grief and community. Left Summer Hall to check out Tiny Little Town, a new piece by a theater company I have really enjoyed in the past, Theater Movement Bazaar, before heading back to Roundabout to check out both VL and Main Character Energy. Two comedies with vastly different senses of humor, and finished off an incredibly fulfilling day with the concert of Drop Dead Gorgeous, where we got to hear some new songs from the In Development musical. While not every show was a winner, the fact that I could see 9 shows in a day and over half of them were 5-star shows to me, that is just absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to do one more day of Fringe tomorrow. See you then.
Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 23. Today was the last day in Edinburgh, and I was feeling the pain. So I took this last day a little easier, seeing only 5 shows, starting with The Giant on the Bridge. A mixture of music and spoken word, this is a show that I really want a concept album of. Had an open slot, so just went to check out Is the Wi-Fi Good in Hell, because the flyer for this show really did a great pitch on this one. And this ended up being another pleasant surprise, all about one man's journey into his own queerness. Then it was time to trek to Newtown to go see my friend Grace Aki's show, To Free a Mockingbird. This is the 4th time I have seen her perform this, and it just hits every single time. And then I had the shortest turnaround with the longest travel time, so I just scheduled an Uber for peace of mind to take me all the way back to Summer Hall to see Weather Girl. Weather Girl is one of those incredibly hyped performance pieces, and you know what? It was worth the hype. This was incredible. And as this was our last night in Edinburgh, we ended up just skipping out on some of the night shows and going to grab dinner before I decided to squeeze in one last show with the late night performance of Every Brilliant Thing, which was the perfect show to end this leg of the Fringe. I had an absolutely incredible time, and I cannot wait to go back. I'm gonna have to go to this every year. Time to head back to London in the morning. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 24. After seeing as much theater as possible in Edinburgh, it was time to head back to London to see even more theater. Woke up bright and early to grab the train, and as soon as we pulled out, I already was like, man, I wish I was staying in Scotland just a little bit longer. But there was still a ton of theater to see in London, so we headed back, checked out a couple bookstores, grabbed some of these delicious cookies, and then headed towards Wembley Stadium to check out the immersive Starlight Express. I have never seen Starlight Express before, but it has always been on my list of shows to experience, and this did not disappoint. Is this show good? Absolutely not. Was this an incredible experience? Abso-freaking-lutely. Maybe quite possibly my least favorite Andrew Lloyd Webber score, but when you put it on roller skates and have trains racing, it makes it entertaining. But seeing only one show in a day made me itch to go back to Edinburgh, so I plan to return at the end of the trip instead of going back to New York right away. Because what is a theater marathon without a couple of really irresponsible decisions? Ended the night at Overtures, because where else are you going to end the night on a weekend in London? And headed to sleep to book a new hostel for my return to Scotland. See you in the morning. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 25, another day of seeing as much theater as possible. Started off the day heading to the iconic Notting Hill to check out the Portobello Road Market. Bought absolutely nothing because we have to save money for theater tickets. And then headed to the first show of the day, Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York. Now, I had seen this previously in December at the Kiln Theater, but it was great to see this in the West End again. I love this show so much. It is like a warm cup of hot cocoa on a cold winter's day. Did a little bit of a touristy walk around London, went to go see Big Ben, went to go spend all my money at the National Theatre Bookshop, and then made my way to Southwark Playhouse to go see I'm Gonna Marry You, Tobey Maguire. This show was absolutely insane in the best way. A perfect companion piece to Fangirls if you want to do a really fun 2-show day. It's wild that both of them have roughly the same plot, but are vastly different in tone. And after all of that walking, it was time to get one last good night of sleep before another huge travel day in the morning. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 26, my last day in London. Now, Sundays are usually an off day in London, but that didn't stop us from still doing a 2-show day. Started off the day grabbing a Sunday roast, though I really just grabbed a sandwich, before heading to the Meniere Chocolate Factory to go see The Baker's Wife. Now, this is a theater that I've always wanted to attend. So many fantastic productions have started here, like the 2006 revival of Sunday in the Park with George, the Merrily revival, and The Baker's Wife is a show that is rarely revived, so I was excited to see a full production of of it. And then we had a bit of a quick turnaround to get across the Thames to go see the closing performance of Your Lie in April. Your Lie in April is a new Frank Wildhorn musical based off of the manga and anime of the same name. The run of this musical was sadly cut short. We didn't know we were going to go see closing when we originally got these tickets, and you could definitely tell it was an emotional performance. And there was a ton of talent in this cast, and I cannot wait to see what shows they do after this. And with that, it was time to grab my stuff, say so long London, and grab the overnight bus to head back to Edinburgh. See you tomorrow for another crazy amount of theater. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 27. After taking the overnight bus back to Scotland, I woke up in Edinburgh exhausted from a not great night of sleep on the bus. But there is no time to rest on a theater marathon, so it was time to head to the theater and see some shows. Dropped my stuff off at the hostel, grabbed a quick cup of coffee, and headed to the theater to see the first show of the day, The Emu War. This was described to me as very Operation Mincemeat-esque, only about a piece of Australian history, and this did not disappoint. It was super cute. Then I continued on the puppet theme by going to see Kafka's Metamorphosis, the musical with puppets. Another really fun show with definitely my sense of dark humor. And then headed to the absolutely chaotic musical Willy's Candy Spectacular. Now this show just started performances, so originally I thought I was going to miss this, but by coming back to Edinburgh for the second leg, I was able to catch it. And these songs were so catchy. Now at this point I was really starting to feel the exhaustion, and even though I was enjoying all the shows I was seeing, I was struggling to stay awake. So I decided to head back to the hostel to take a quick nap, but that nap ended up turning into me waking up 14 hours later. So guess that's the end of today. See you tomorrow. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 28. We are nearing the end of my 30-day marathon of seeing as much theater as possible with another day at the Edinburgh Fringe. And in true Theater is Life fashion, I had no shows planned for today, so we were truly winging it. Started off the day at the Gardening Club, which is a new in-develop musical. This is only about the first act, but I'm very intrigued with where this show ends up. I cannot wait to follow this development. Really wanted to see some more movement pieces today, so I headed to Zoo Southside to see two new pieces of Danish theater. Started off with the show Tennis, which is a reenactment of the 1980s Wimbledon tournament between McEnroe and Bjorn. This was a ton of fun. Grabbed my favorite food item of the Fringe before heading back to Zoo Southside to go see This Is Not Romeo and Juliet. And I'm not gonna lie, this is not a show I understood in any way, shape, or form. Then headed back to my favorite venue, Summer Hall, to see the two-parter play, Half Man, Half Bull. I did see both parts. First part was Theseus and then Daedalus. You know I love my Greek myth retellings, and both parts were just incredible pieces of theater. Did a major tonal shift heading to Tim Murray is Witches, and as someone who thinks Ursula is the hero of The Little Mermaid, I found this show incredibly relatable. Finally finished off the night with a return visit to House of Cleopatra. This was my only repeat visit of the Fringe, but I definitely wanted to finish the night dancing the night away. See you tomorrow for my last day at the Fringe, for real this time. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure Day 29, and sadly the last day in Edinburgh. And start the day bright and early with the 10 a.m. performance of Same Team at Traverse. And this is an incredible play about teamwork set at the Homeless World Cup that I did not know was a thing until this play. Then headed over to Summer Hall, and I had a bit of time, so I started writing reviews, and the fire alarm went off, evacuating the whole building. This ended up delaying some shows, and some shows were not affected at all, which ended up really messing up my schedule later in the day. Like my first play after the alarm went off was My Mother's Funeral, which was delayed about 15 minutes. Absolutely worth the wait. This play was one of the reasons why I came back to the Fringe, and it was absolutely worth it. I adored this show. My next show, also in Summer Hall, was Fame Hungry, which ended up not being delayed at all, and I ended up missing the opening scene. Fortunately, this entire show is live streamed every day on TikTok. Then I headed over to Bristow Square to grab my favorite pizza one last time before heading to the Patter House to see Pop Off Michelangelo, a absolutely hilarious musical about the rivalry between Michelangelo and Leonardo. Then I headed to Underbelly Cowgate to see My Last Two Brain Cells, which was a recommendation from some of you in my comments that was a ton of fun. The show also ended up running a little long, so Aaron and I literally had to sprint to Bristow Square to see my last show of the Fringe, 6 chick flicks. I love theater and I love chick flicks, and getting to see the
marriage of the two of those in a really fun Fringe show was the perfect way to end my Fringe. See you tomorrow when it's time to finally head back to the US.
Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure, day 30. We did it! 30 days of seeing as much theater as possible, and sadly it was time to finally leave the UK. But I wasn't heading back home to Colorado just yet. I was flying back to New York to hopefully see some more theater tonight. Took one last walk and scenic tram ride through the gorgeous Edinburgh before heading to the airport and grabbing the final pret of the trip. And seeing as much theater as possible doesn't need to come to an end just because I'm on a plane. So obviously spent my time in the air watching The Waitress Pro Shot. Now, even though I was supposed to land in New York around 4:30 p.m., I did not book a show tonight at all because I did not know exactly how long it was going to take for me to get through customs or if travel was going to be in my favor this day. But a theater miracle happened and I landed in New York a whole hour early. They didn't even have a gate for us. They had us unload in the middle of the tarmac. I had also downloaded the mobile passport control app and got all of my customs stuff done on the plane, so I got through customs in literally 5 minutes. I was so ahead of schedule that by the time my original landing time came, I was already on the subway going to pick up my work laptop from where I had left it. And my number one choice for seeing a show tonight was hands down the extremely limited run of Foul Play, which unfortunately was sold out. Put myself on the waiting list, grabbed an appropriate dinner, and then headed back to the theater to see if I got in. And miracles were in my favor today because I made it into the show. Another successful day of theater going. See you tomorrow for the last day of the Great Theater Adventure. Welcome to the Great Theater Adventure, day 31, the last day of my month-long marathon to see as much theater as possible. Spent most of the day in the drama bookshop getting some work done and trying not to buy every single play that I had seen on this trip before grabbing some empanada mama and heading to the final show of the trip, Table 17. Table 17 is a new play currently playing at MCC, and I had previously seen a reading of this play and fell in love with it. I was so excited to see it fully staged, and it did not disappoint. Between Chicken and Biscuits, Table 17, and Pure Glitter, his play that I saw a reading of last month, Douglas Lyons is quickly becoming one of my favorite contemporary playwrights. I just love his work. It's so funny. And getting to see this fully staged was the perfect way to finish off my month-long marathon. And then it was time to grab my stuff and head to the airport. Whenever I'm flying west, I always like to take the first flight in the morning, and then that way I can just stay out with friends, go to the airport, stay up all night, and sleep on the plane. And then when I wake up, I'm home. Thank you so much for following along this journey. It has been a wild ride seeing so much theater because theater truly is life. I'm definitely happy to be home for now, but I cannot wait for my next theater adventure.